Right, the first question is how did you get involved with Specsavers and Kidscape?
I got involved with Specsavers when they gave me the Celebrity Glasses Wearer of the Year award, and that was back in 2007.
Right.
And then I inherited working with Kidscape through that, really, because Kidscape had been a nominated charity of Specsavers for so many years. And then after I became ambassador for Specsavers, Kidscape asked me to become ambassador for them as well. So kind of one big happy family all happened in one fell swoop.
And when was that exactly?
2007.
2007.
Yeah, so 2007 to 2008, it kind of all kicked off. And then I started presenting the awards for them and doing the ambassadorship role for Specsavers. And then I launched my glasses with Specsavers. And in the whole time through, I've been raising money for Kidscape.
What would be your advice to any child who's actually been bullied?
My advice would be that you are not on your own. Lots of people out there get bullied, so you mustn't ever feel that you've been backed into a corner, because bullies are very clever at making you believe that you're the only person that feels that way. I would say find your voice, because you can't keep it to yourself. You need to tell somebody about it, but find somebody that you trust, and don't feel pressurized to tell your family if you don't want to. Don't feel pressurized to tell your school if you don't want to. You've got to find the people that you trust the most. It might be a family friend, it might be one of your friends, it could be your sister's friends, it doesn't matter who it is. Find somebody that you really trust and make sure that you are very honest about it. And also I would say as well, for me, is maybe a good idea is to somehow keep a mental note of why and how you feel when you are being bullied. Because when it comes to telling other people about being bullied, you can often forget the stuff because you just want to get it out of your head. But it's very important the details are there, and because if there's anybody that needs to be questioned, or if the school needs to get involved, or the police need to get involved, then you will have to go over what has happened to you. So try and keep it as fresh as possible.
Right. What about parents? I mean, is there any sort of sign that you think that parents can actually look out for? Because
I think there are definitely signs.
When I was growing up, I think generally parents are not really fully aware of what's going on in their children's lives. I mean,
but the problem is with parents is that if a parent gets too involved, the kid doesn't want them to do it. They get bullied for that, and so it's very difficult for parents. In fact, Kidscape have got a telephone line that parents can call into, and they can get advice if they think their child is being bullied. I think the thing that you have to do, if you do suspect that your child is being bullied, then you need to open up a clear and honest communication with the child. So, confronting sometimes can be very difficult because a child might feel slightly embarrassed. They might want to, ignore it or deny it because they're afraid of what might happen if anything happens with the bullies. So make sure that, you are a friend, and yes, you are being a parent, and a parent's responsibility is to obviously care and to guide, but you do need to be a friend at the same time. So you need to allow that child to make his or her decisions as well and go forward with how they want to deal with it.
Okay. Third question, if you could live in any building in the world, where would you live?
That's an interesting question. If I could live in any building in the world, where would I live?
What would be your dream home?
My dream home. I've got so many because I'm really schizophrenic with my taste, and so sometimes I want to be out in the country, in the British countryside, wearing tweed and walking my dog, and then I want to be in Paris, living in a tiny little maisonette, looking over a beautiful square, and then I want to be in Venice, or all over the world. So I can't answer that. And if I had to put all of my dreams into one space, I'd probably have to say I wanted to live in a city.
What would be in the top five? Maybe a few.
The top five. I would love a country home with beautiful views of the English countryside. I think it's beautiful here. I would love to live in Marais in Paris, which I love as well. I would love to live in Rome at the bottom of the Spanish Steps. It's absolutely beautiful around there. I would love to live in the most central part of Hong Kong Island because it's just incredible, and great restaurants and bars, and there's bars. And I'd probably like to live in St. Mark's in New York. as well. Whenever I go to New York, when I used to go for Fashion Week, or if I've ever been over there to work, I've always made sure that I would go down to St Bart's and have a slice of pizza and drink a cold beer and sit on the orange bricks and just watch the whole Lower Manhattan go by. I love it down there.
What is your favourite animal?
My favourite animal is my dog.
Your dog?
And I have a French bulldog called Dolly, and she's beautiful, and she is absolutely my favourite animal. She drives me nuts, and she's bonkers, but I do love her to pieces.
Have you always sort of been into dogs?
Was brought up with dogs. We've always had Alsatians, and then as I got older, my dad would take in strays, and so we've always had a family pet. And I basically got Dolly this year, and I wasn't going to get a pet. I had no idea at all why I did it, but I just decided one day I was going to do it. And it's hard work, but it does pay off. I mean, she's absolutely incredible, and she's like a family member now.
Tell me about some of your favourite places in London.
My favourite places in London. I love South Bank. I love the creativity. I love the anonymity. I love all kind of urban spaces down there, and I think the views are beautiful. That's me. I'm so sorry. I love South Bank. I love the creativity. I love the anonymity. I love the views, and I think it kind of has a feel of absolute innovation around there, and I love it. I really like where I live. Actually, I don't want to really say where I live, but I live in a really amazing bohemian part of London that's kind of a little bit up and coming. It's kind of not. It hasn't got the establishment that the East End has got, and it doesn't have the money that the West End has got. But it's kind of new buzz, and it's really nice watching it grow. But that's amazing. I'm not going to tell you where, but that is amazing. I love it up in Hampstead and Camden House and around the whole top parts. I love the walks up there. I really love boutique shopping. I much prefer boutique shopping than massive oversized shopping. So
is that because of the crowd?
I think that I lose my focus in big shops because I've just got too many stimulus. The lights, the music, the people, the merchandising. It all becomes a little bit too much. And so I quite like the idea of being in an intimate space, and I love the idea of somebody prepping the best stuff out there for me instead of me having to go through all the stuff that I would never ever look at. And so I think that every now and again you get a concept store that you fall in love with, that you would buy everything in that store, and that's when you get that's like gold dust. And then you must talk to the owners, talk to the buyers, make friends with them all, and they will become friends forever because they've got exactly the same taste as you. And there's a few of those pocketed around London. There's one off Brick Lane that I absolutely love. I do like Notting Hill, and it's but I always feel a little bit too young for Notting Hill. I don't feel like I'm old enough to enjoy Notting Hill. But there's also loads of I really quite like Walthamstow Village as well. I like it when it's quite quaint. Like I said earlier, I'm schizophrenic. I can never commit to anything.
Right.
So one minute I want a loft space in a beautiful built-up area. The next thing I want greenery and walks in the park. So it depends what mood I'm in. I just have to have lots of places to live and eat.
And when you go shopping, do you actually go with a view with something that you want in mind, or are you actually more of a shopper who like to look around and perhaps?
It depends, because I shop so much because I have to for work.
Yeah.
And not for other people, for myself. So different outfits for going to different events and stuff like that. I tend to do maybe a run twice a year where I will comb the high street. And I will go out and I will know exactly what I'm looking for. And then the rest of my shopping is if I've got an extra half an hour between meetings, I'll nip into Dover Street Market. If I've got if I finish work a bit early, then I'll nip into Selfridges. Or I might be out on a Sunday for a walk with the dog and I'll nip around and have a look at the boutiques on Brick Lane. And so those kind of shopping experiences are more browsing, and if I see anything, I'll get it. But most of the time it has to be slightly organised because I work so often, and I've always need to have so much stuff and to wear constantly and split it over all of my life. So if I didn't, what I'm saying to you is it depends again entirely on what I'm shopping for and what I'm looking for, or where I am and what is my space at that time.
Okay. And what do you like shopping for? What really excites you? Is it jackets,
Bags.
shoes, bags, handbags?
I love handbags.
You
I
do?
love handbags. I've got so many bloody handbags, but I do love them. And once I've got one, I recently bought the new Chanel tote, which I fell in love with, and it's stunning. But I laid in bed the night before I used it for the first time, and I couldn't sleep. It's so awful.
Oh my God.
And it's still at my age, and I've been dressing people for nearly 20 years, and I still get excited about clothes and still get excited about bags and stuff like that. So bags is what I shop for. I get most excited about, and what I least get excited about is jewellery actually.
Right. And is it only men you go for? Or are you open about looking? Do you actually look at women's as well?
No, I've got women. I've got a few women's handbags. If I love them, then I couldn't give a fuck.
Of course.
I don't care, and so my style is quite androgynous actually. My taste is quite androgynous. I love being a bloke. I quite like being a boy. I like the idea.
You got more options, don't you? When you actually shop in a woman's section inside.
It depends on your style, really.
Right.
I do love menswear,
You do.
and I think that menswear kind of gets a bit of a bad rap. And a lot of guys say, "Well, you can't do very much with menswear." I think that's complete rubbish. I don't think you've tried hard enough. That's all it is. And I always say the best stylists out there are menswear stylists. When you've got a brilliant Alistair Mackey or you've got a genius menswear stylist, they will wipe the floor with anyone because you have to be far more intricate about menswear. It's subtle. It's not about a massive embellishment or it's not about a huge dysfunctional cut. It's subtle and it's detailed and it's sexy. And the idea of a man looking pretty but masculine at the same time is a very difficult space to find.
And what are your favourite shops? Have you got
my favourite? I love Dover Street Market. I love Beyond Retro. I quite like Sandro at the moment. I like Cos as well. Are we talking shops or are we talking boutiques?
Both. Yeah.
Oh my god, shops. I love Balenciaga. I love Yves Saint Laurent. I quite like a bit of Prada. Now I'm getting older. I used to hate Prada. I wouldn't even look at buying any, but now I've started finding myself buying some. I think Burberry's really come together. I quite like McQueen, shops, Dover Street Market, and I quite like matches actually. I quite like the buy-in matches. Now that I've got older again, it's a little bit more subtle and it's less. When I was younger and I was styling, it was always what can I do to myself to make myself really stand out. I've kind of gone the opposite way now, and I kind of think what can I do to make myself fall into line.
Okay. So your tastes are changing then.
Definitely. I'm coming up to 40 now, and so it does change. And now I find myself, I must have bought this season 40 sweatshirts. Yeah, I do. I don't think we do. If you think about the greats out there, Karl Lagerfeld wears a uniform every day. Therefore, he's not picky about his clothes because he's given himself a pastiche of who he is. Alexander McQueen, who is a complete, one of the greatest designers ever. He does the same thing. He did do the same thing. He wore his t-shirt and his jeans. It became his uniform. Ralph Lauren, probably the most commercial designer of all time out in America. He does the same thing. He's always with his blazer and his jeans. What you start to do is you start to form a uniform, and it's because, if you spend your entire life making things look pretty and beautiful and being bothered about an inch turn or being bothered about a hem lift or being bothered about a stitch detail, if you take that back with you, it just becomes everything that you are, and you don't become anything more than that. And life's too short to be about one thing. It's got to be about family and friends and experiences and culture and other people's design. I'm far more interested in how other people dress than I am about myself, and I think that that's an age thing.
Amazing.
When I was younger, if anyone had asked me that, I would tell them to bollocks and said, "Are you kidding me? This is an expression of who I am, and this is what I'm about, and this is, And yes, I'm completely right, but I think you do grow out of that. And I think I had my moment with fashion, and I really enjoyed it in the late 90s and the early noughties. I loved it. I loved everything it was about. But I do think you get to the point where you kind of think, if you work in fashion, only if you work in it, I do think that you think, actually, this has got to be about work now. Because I want to go and put a sweatshirt on and walk my dog and be with my friends and drink pink lemonade in the field.
What is the best advice you've ever been given?
The best advice I've ever been given was from Dawn French, who's a dear friend of mine, and I was having a tricky time with work, and I went over to her apartment in London, and she said to me, your biggest power and your biggest strength when it comes to work is saying no. And it's really weird because my agent says the same thing to me, and in fact a lot of people have said the same thing to me over my years, because I am very much a yes man. I like to please, I like to make sure everyone's happy with me, and I still have a fear of not being liked. All those years of being a young bullied child is still very much there, but it wasn't until Dawn said it to me that I actually had any resonance in my brain, and I've learned to sometimes, not always, sometimes put that into practice and say, actually no, I'm not going to do this. And it's not about being a diva, and it's more to do with, actually I don't feel comfortable with this, and therefore I'm not going to do it. Whereas when I was younger, I probably would have said, yes, I'll do it. And I remember being a stylist years ago and doing stuff that I just thought looked absolutely hideous and hated it, but I had to do it because my clients wanted me to do it, or the singer I was dressing or the actress that I was dressing really liked it and I had to do it. No, I wouldn't do it now. If I didn't like it, I'd just turn around and say, well, if you want to do it, it's up to you, but I just think...
But are you glad you did it when you were...
that's a really hard question. Yes, I am glad, because my job is to be a clothes servant. That's what I do, is I dress people and I produce clothes for them and I give them an image, and so therefore being a clothes servant I have to deliver to whoever's employing me. And for that reason I'm very proud that I did it, and I'm very glad. But then the other side of my brain, which is now very arrogant and much older, is it says, no, actually I'm not. I should have just turned around and said, no, I should have kept my integrity. But I had two decisions in my life. I could have gone this way and stayed with doing edgy music, fashion, creative stuff, or become commercial and have a business out of it. And I chose to have a business and be commercial because it's where I thrive best with my work, and it's where I have more say over what I'm doing. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
I know I waffled in on that one, I apologise.
That's okay.
That's going to take a lot of editing. Oh my god, you are very good at questions. Is there a defining moment over my career? Yes, several. The first big moment was when I took a job in a restaurant as a waiter, and I was working as a recruitment consultant in the city and was absolutely dreadful at it. And I decided that I wanted to go and have a go at fashion and didn't know what I wanted to do, so I decided to leave the recruitment consultancy and go and work in a restaurant so I could free up my days to go to castings and build up a portfolio. And it was the best decision I could have done because I hated working in the city.
Right.
I was terrible at the job, but I was a very good waiter where I met loads of people and loads of contacts, and it gave me enough time to sort my head out. So that was one really important one. And I think probably the second one was when... The second one was actually on a test, so it wasn't even for publication. But I was working with a great photographer called John Rowley, and his wife Lisa Valencia was doing the makeup, and we were styling up, and we were doing a photo shoot in a forest in North London, and I'd been to Egypt and borrowed loads of clothes to do a fashion editorial for a magazine called Fiche Mir, and it was all very glam and embellished and big, and I loved it. And I can't even remember what I had then. We had amazing dresses that were shoulders made out of pins, and it was beautiful and glamorous and over the top. And so I had all these clothes left over from the shoot that I hadn't returned back to the press office yet. So I called up the photographer John and said, look, I've got all these clothes.
Naughty.
Sorry?
It's a bit naughty.
That's how every stylist does their tests, I'm telling you right now. And if for any stylist out there said they doesn't, it's complete crap. And for any designer says you can't do that, you've got to get your clothes out somehow. And so I called him up and said, I've got all these amazing clothes, do you want to shoot it? So we went into a forest and shot the clothes, And I remember John and Lisa saying to me, "You're one of the best stylists I think we've ever worked with because you don't overdo it. It's just simple." And I still remember that. And that comment from friends whilst doing a test shoot for my portfolio gave me a massive amount of confidence to go out there actually and really push myself and sell myself. And it did take me to the next level. And it was that next level that I then found my fame and really got noticed and started working with quite high profile bands, and it was that comment that really pushed me up there. The last music album I bought was a We Remember Gregory Isaac, which is a compilation reggae album.
I like that one.
It's great. Yeah.
Fantastic. What are your highlights of the year?
My highlights of this year, obviously finding Dolly in my life, my dog. That was one massive highlight. Calling my mum and dad up and saying that I was sending them off to New Zealand on holiday, which was very nice. Spectacle Saver of the Year, of course. Spectacle Wearer of the Year, of course. Highlight of my year. And hearing from the hospital that my back was going to be okay.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Okay, Gok Wan, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you very much.
It's been a real pleasure.
And I have to say, your questions are bloody brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm glad you enjoyed them.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you so much.
You are more than welcome. I shall leave you to unpack.